What led to the cancellation of my engagement can only be described as a dramatic event. My fiancée, whom I will call Julia, and I had planned to get married last weekend, after 3 years of dating and 5 years of knowing each other. I thought she was the one, and our relationship seemed strong, at least I thought so. 2 weekends before the wedding, Julia and 7 of her friends went to Miami for a bachelorette party. I had no concerns. We had a deep trust between us. I expected a typical bachelorette party with drinking, clubs, and maybe a stripper. I even drove her to the airport and wished her a good time. While she was away, I was busy with friends, planning the wedding, and trying on tuxedos. Julia texted me about how much fun she was having and how much she missed me. When she returned, Julia was happy but tired, and she told me about her great weekend. Everything changed on Wednesday evening, 3 days before our wedding, when I received a disturbing message from an unknown person on my phone. The sender wrote that I needed to see what Julia had been doing at her bachelorette party and that she wasn't who I thought she was. A video was attached to the message. At first I thought it was spam, but for some strange reason I watched it. What I saw that evening devastated me. Julia was in a hotel room with 2 men doing things that I couldn't interpret in any other way. She seemed fully conscious. She looked at the camera and said with a laugh, "What happens in Miami stays in Miami, right?" That 3-minute, 42-second video shattered the image of our future that I had built in my mind. Stunned, but not ready for confrontation, I decided not to react. I needed to think about what I had seen, and I spent the next night in the guest bedroom pretending to be sick. The next morning, while she was at her dress fitting, I showed the video to my best man, Tony. Seeing his reaction, I had no more doubts. I decided I couldn't go through with the wedding. While Julia was with her mother, I gathered a few essentials and left her a note. "I know what happened in Miami. The wedding is off," I wrote, and slipped the note in with her keys and her engagement ring. I moved in on Tony's couch for a while and turned off my phone to wait out the storm. On our wedding day, Saturday morning, when I turned on my phone, I found 47 missed calls and over 60 messages from Julia, her family, and our mutual friends. They ranged from "I'm worried about you" to "You're such a jerk, please come back." My parents, who were very upset about my departure, were baffled when they were told what had happened. I sent a mass message to all the wedding guests apologizing and canceling the wedding due to unforeseen circumstances. I also wrote Julia a private message. "We have nothing to talk about. It's over." A week passed. I found an apartment and started sorting out our affairs. Even after I blocked Julia on several social networks, she tries to send her messages and says it was a drunken mistake under pressure from friends. But I know what I saw. She knew what she was doing. Julia's cousin, who wasn't at the bachelorette party, contacted me, worried about Julia and begging me to at least talk to her. I refused, saying I couldn't stand to see them together. The thought of saying vows of loyalty and trust when she had already broken those basic principles was unbearable to me. Some might say I couldn't have found a worse way to leave this world, but what could be worse than betrayal? First she went to church, then she was late for our date. The girl I loved had deceived me so deeply right before our wedding that I thought I would die from the pain and humiliation. 2 weeks later, I received a completely different explanation. I found out who sent me the video. A friend of one of the guys who was with Julia. She did some digging on social media and found out that he had bragged about the incident and sent me the video anonymously. Meanwhile, Julia continues to try to contact me and even came to my new apartment once in tears, begging me to give her a chance to explain. I let her in, not wanting any more public scenes. Her explanation was too typical. She was drunk, there were no feelings involved, and it meant nothing. But as she continued, new details emerged. Julia told me that her friends had encouraged her to have a casual fling, and that these guys weren't strangers to her. They had spent the weekend together, having fun. Julia's confessions revealed a series of flirtations and deliberate decisions that led to actions that were anything but improvised. The most upsetting part was that she discovered that some of her friends had not only approved of her actions, but had also filmed everything. These were people I considered friends. They were among those who stood beside us at our wedding. I asked her about it, and she replied that it was normal to have one last fling before the wedding. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore and told them that if cheating on someone you love is okay, then God help us. Julia's intense feelings are tearing her apart even more, and now I am cruel and unyielding. Or, if I loved her, I would understand that she made a mistake and we could fix things. I replied that if she really loved me, she wouldn't have cheated. She left, but not without telling me that I would regret throwing away everything we had built because of one mistake. After that, Julia started playing the victim, saying that I didn't give her a chance to tell her side of the story. Some mutual friends also believed her version, which further complicated the situation. Now there is a financial battle going on, including Julia demanding reimbursement for the wedding expenses, which never took place because of her infidelity. I spoke with a lawyer about our joint finances, which amounted to about $31,000 for the wedding and the house we planned to buy. I left with half of that amount, but Julia says I stole it. According to the lawyer, I am in the right, but the situation is very awkward. This whole process has affected me deeply, and I am angry and sad. I am going to therapy, which is helping. But then memories of that video come back, and with them, nausea and pain. Although I really want to post the video online and make it public to prove I was right, I will not resort to such childish revenge. Instead, I'm working on self-help, reaching out to friends who love and support me, and putting my recovery first. As I go through this difficult period, I'm focusing on making sure Julia respects my request not to contact me, and I don't want to find out how she's doing from mutual friends. The pain will never go away completely, but I learned some terrible things about her character before I wasted my time marrying her. A month has passed, and everything has changed. Julia had a nervous breakdown and ended up in the hospital due to what she now calls severe depression and anxiety. Her relatives blame me for causing her to suffer because of my unwillingness to reconcile. As much as I sympathize with her, I will not take responsibility for her actions. Unbeknownst to him, one of the two guys Julia was seeing was married, and his wife found out and filed for divorce. In a rage, she contacted me, and we spent nearly 2 hours discussing our infidelities. We are bound by a shared suffering, and we agreed to meet for coffee sometime to simply support each other. Her financial problems are getting worse, and her father is coming to my work and insisting that I pay for the wedding. This has led to negative press coverage, and I've had to seek legal advice. My social life has been just as chaotic. Julia's friends started a campaign to discredit me, portraying me as a villain who abandoned his fiancée because of one mistake, and the whole story is full of things my ex didn't admit to. Some friends have sided with Julia or are trying to beg me for forgiveness, but I can't compromise my integrity. During this chaotic time, I've focused on self-improvement. Therapy is helping me heal, and I'm rebuilding relationships with old friends. I also went on a solo trip to Colorado to clear my head and reflect on this stage of my life. As I sort through Julia's belongings in our shared apartment, I think back on the life we built together over the past 5 years. The good and bad memories weigh heavily on my heart and add another blow to the painful truth that the person I loved and trusted may not have existed. One of my friends said that in a way I'm lucky because, in his opinion, if Julia was able to betray my trust before we got married, she would have done the same after. I know he's probably right, but that doesn't make me feel any better. I feel so damn stupid for not noticing the signs that I can see now in hindsight, all the red flags I chose to ignore. I've tried to think of any signs that Julia could have been so deceitful, but nothing comes to mind. She seemed just as interested in our future as I was. People often ask me if I regret not telling her everything to her face before I left. No, I don't. After the announcement, a few days later, I was stunned and unable to express my feelings. If I had tried to do so at that moment, there's no telling how I would have reacted, but I probably would have done something I would have regretted. Leaving allowed me to get the distance I needed to assess the situation more clearly. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time. Some days are easy, some days are hard. There are days when I wake up and forget about my heartbreak for a moment, but then it all comes back and hurts me again. However, it is gradually getting easier. 3 months have passed, and I hadn't planned on writing an update, but yesterday's news prompted me to do so. My meetings with Valerie, the wife of one of the men who dated Julie, have become regular. A connection has developed between us, although it is based more on shared traumatic experiences than romantic interest. So we have decided to keep our relationship platonic for now, while we both work through our betrayals. And as if that weren't enough, last week Julie came to me pregnant with a child she said was mine. She also said she was about 4 months along, which coincided with the date of her bachelorette party. My first reaction was denial. I thought it might be someone from Miami. She insisted that we sleep together the night before she left, although I honestly don't remember it. But the timing does match. I told her I would demand a paternity test as soon as it was medically possible. She got very angry and called me heartless, asking who the father of her child was. I stood my ground. I'm not going to jump to conclusions without proof, knowing about her past dishonesty. This discovery shook me again, bringing back emotions I thought I had lost. Not being able to have a child with Julia and be tied to her for the rest of my life. I had always wanted to be a father, but I never thought it would happen, especially with someone I didn't trust. But if she, my ex, later finds out that the child is really mine, I want to be a part of his life. I don't want my child to live wondering why his father abandoned him. But the thought of raising a child with someone who betrayed me so cruelly scares me. Julia seems to think that her pregnancy changes everything, that it could be a bridge to reconciliation. She even said that we should try again for the sake of the child, but I said no. This will be done regardless of the results of the paternity test. This has triggered another wave of harassment from her family, who are already calling me a deadbeat, even before the baby is born. They seem to forget that I am willing to take responsibility if the child is mine, but I just want to take the test so I know whether I have to take responsibility. On the other hand, the issues of payment and money have now been resolved. We were able to come to a fairly amicable agreement that isn't ideal for either of us, but it has allowed us both to close this chapter. I paid more than I had hoped for some of the wedding expenses, but significantly less than Julia had initially requested. I lost the house, but it all worked out because I found a new apartment that I like better than the one we were going to buy. The social upheaval continues, with Julia's friends still telling their version of events. But now, fewer and fewer people seem to believe it. The truth always comes out. Some mutual friends who initially supported her have now contacted us to apologize after hearing the whole story from other people who were at the bachelorette party. Not everyone in the group agreed with what happened, and many members are now publicly expressing their disagreement. One of the bridesmaids, Lexi, even called to apologize and admitted that she was the one who took the video. We regret how we supported Julia. Lexi admitted that Julia had used cocaine that weekend, which she had never mentioned, and admitted that things got out of hand. This doesn't excuse Julia's behavior, but it does add another layer to the story. Lexi also confirmed my suspicion that Tess had been unfaithful in the past. Specifically, she had an affair 2 years ago with a coworker that her friends helped her cover up. I was glad to hear this, even though I was devastated and no longer had any doubts about my decision to break up with her. As for my health, I feel much better. Therapy is helping, and my trip to Colorado alone gave me the clarity I so desperately needed. I'm working hard and keeping busy with hobbies, even going on casual dates, though I'm not ready for anything serious yet. The hardest part right now is the uncertainty about the pregnancy. If the baby is mine, it will change my life dramatically. If not, I will breathe a sigh of relief, but with the deepest sympathy for the child caught up in such a storm. For now, I'm focused on the paternity test and continuing the healing process. 6 months later, I received the results of the paternity test. The child is not mine. I can't say I was surprised, although the reaction was more intense. It was mostly a feeling of relief, but also a sense of loss for a future that was never meant to be mine. I had been preparing myself emotionally for fatherhood, although I was terrified by the thought of raising a child with Julia. Julia's reaction was extreme. She was hysterical when she heard the news. She confessed to me through tears that she wanted the baby to be mine and that it would somehow bring us back together. She admitted that she had suspected that one of the guys from Miami might be the father, but refused to believe it because it was too painful to face reality. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Until I remembered the months of lies, manipulation, and harassment from her and her family that had forced me to take responsibility for a child that wasn't mine. When I asked her about Lexi's confession that she had cheated on me in the past, she denied everything at first, but eventually admitted that 2 years ago, after a company party, she had a one-night stand with a colleague. She claimed it didn't count because it was a drunken mistake, purely physical. I asked her if there had been other instances, and after some arguing, she told me about only one other, which I found out about a year into our relationship. Another secret she had been hiding from me. So the woman I thought I would spend the rest of my life with had cheated on me with at least 3 men, and who knows how many more, not to mention what even her friends didn't know about. Strangely enough, if she had been honest with me, we could have overcome the previous events. But the double life and the huge betrayal right before our wedding were too much to forgive. All the trust between us was gone. Julia, who is the child's biological mother, got involved with 2 men when she realized she was pregnant in Miami. One of them blocked her, and the other, who is married, is in the process of getting a divorce and doesn't want to hear anything about the child. Valerie, his soon-to-be ex-wife, told me part of this story. It seems he wants to claim that it was consensual, but not his idea, and that he was too drunk to use protection properly. His excuses don't convince anyone. Now Julia has to come to terms with the idea that she will be a single mother with 2 fathers who refuse to have anything to do with the child. Her family, who once condemned me, is now struggling to help her cope with this tragedy. Her father, who cornered me at work and demanded that I take responsibility, now won't look me in the eye when we cross paths. For Julia, this has had social consequences. When the whole story came out, many of her friends turned their backs on her. Her professional life has also suffered. She took a long leave of absence due to mental health issues and complications with her pregnancy. I've heard that she was also passed over for a promotion she had been promised. And if you think I feel any satisfaction from any of this, you're wrong. On the contrary, I feel sad. Sad about the years I spent with someone who could so easily break my trust, about the future we imagined but will never have, and about the child who will be born into such difficult circumstances. But in this sadness, I feel relief. Thank God I found out what Julia was really like before I married her, and I'm glad there's no child between us to bind us together. I'm so glad I can close this chapter of my life and move on without her shadow hanging over me. As for me, life is good. GJ. I have a new apartment that feels like home, a great job, and I even got a promotion last month. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones, and I've even started dating a woman named Melissa. It's too early to talk about anything serious, but the relationship looks promising. She knows where I'm coming from and is patient with my trust issues, which I'm still working on. The financial disputes have been settled. Although the lawyer's bills were substantial, peace of mind is priceless. Last week, Julia picked up the last of her things from storage, ending our logistical relationship. Valerie and I stay in touch, occasionally meet up, and remain sincere friends thanks to our shared experience. She is currently dating someone new and seems happy. We always laugh about how we should thank our exes for inadvertently bringing us together. This is probably the last time I'll update this story. As we know, it ended. Julia got what she deserved and now has to pay for it. I've really come to terms with what happened and am trying to build a new life. In a way, I'm glad for that anonymous text with the link to the video. If it weren't for that, I would have married Julia and inevitably discovered what a shameless slut she was, and I might have become the father of another man's child. Instead, I am now free and can find happiness with someone who deserves my trust. To those facing similar difficulties, I want to say, everything will be okay. The pain won't go away, but it will become less acute. Life goes on, and sometimes the worst betrayal becomes the beginning of an amazing new journey. And now, a year later, I feel compelled to share some more news. Life really has become wonderful. I feel very good. The promotion at work came with a significant pay raise, which I spent on travel, something I had always wanted to do but never did when I was with Julia. I visited Japan, Portugal, and spent a month working remotely from Argentina. Each trip was so cleansing that I couldn't even imagine it. Melissa and I, on the other hand, immediately started living life to the fullest. Well, that wasn't my intention, but life has a strange way of working things out. She is everything Julia wasn't: honest, direct, supportive, but not coddling. We've been together for 8 months now, and I've never felt so confident in a relationship. She knows everything about my history and is patient with my trust issues. I managed to go several months without seeing Julia, as I only received objective reports of her successes from mutual friends who ignored my request not to tell me any news. I knew she had given birth to a boy and was struggling with single motherhood, but that she had a lot of support from her parents. Then I learned that one of the men from Miami had finally agreed to take a paternity test, and when paternity was confirmed, he categorically refused, to have anything to do with the child except to pay child support as ordered by the court. It seemed that our paths would never cross again, but last week, on a whim, I walked into a coffee shop downtown and saw Julia. At first, I hardly recognized her. She had changed so much. She had lost weight, looked tired, and her hair was cut short. The vibrant woman I had loved so much seemed to have been replaced by someone who was tired of life. She was alone, without a child. When she saw me, we looked into each other's eyes for a moment, and she said, "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to sit with her for 5 minutes. She looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for how I acted afterward. You deserve better. I was selfish and stupid and destroyed everything I had." It wasn't the apology I had expected, but it seemed sincere. Julia didn't rush to make excuses or blame others. She simply took responsibility. She told me about her current life, the challenges she faces as a single mother, the judgment from those who knew about her past, and the friends and respect she had lost. She said her parents were selling their house to move closer and help with the child. Her career was on the rise, but in her words, it's been hard. I'm also seeing a therapist to break the habit of destroying my own happiness. What touched me most about her confession was that she regretted hurting someone who truly loved her. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said, "but I want you to know that I regret what I did every day." I didn't say much about it. There was nothing to say. I had long since stopped feeling angry. I had moved on to indifference and a slight sadness about what might have been. I thanked her for her apology and wished her well with her son. As I got up to leave, she asked me one last question. "Are you happy?" I thought about Melissa, about my work, about traveling, about my friends, and about the life I had built after the breakup. "Yes," I replied. "I'm happy." She nodded and smiled, though there was sadness in her smile. "Good. You deserve it." That brief conversation was more therapeutic than all my psychotherapy sessions combined. I didn't need her apology, but seeing her hear herself and acknowledge the reality of what she had done and how it had affected her quickly made up for it. With the last weight lifted off my shoulders, I walked out of the cafe and already felt relieved. No anger, no resentment, not even pity. Just a stoic understanding that people make choices that irreversibly affect the course of their lives, and the best you can do is adapt and move on. The other day, I was sitting with Melissa on the balcony watching the sunset, and I realized one thing. I am grateful for what happened. Not because Julia deserved karmic retribution, and not because I rejoice in her suffering, but because this painful episode freed me and allowed me to experience true happiness. She unwittingly freed me by trying to destroy me. And that, ladies, is the final chapter of The Story I Never Thought I'd Be In. Thank you to everyone who followed us and supported us. To those who are going through the same pain, hang in there, let the pain go, and sometimes what awaits you on the other side is much better than what you lost. Life goes on, and from time to time it gets better than you could have imagined.